Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to the ICE community out there. This is your PT on ICE Daily Show podcast. I am Dr. Joe Hanisco. I am one of the lead faculty, clinical manager of the fitness athlete team. And today we're going to be discussing early arm bend in Olympic lifting, so the clean and the snatch. So that's the target for today. It should be a short and sweet one, but a conversation that I've been having a few times while teaching some live courses and with some of the athletes in my gym as well. So we'll get into early arm bend, when it's okay and when it's problematic, and then how we maybe go about fixing that if it's an issue for our athletes, and what to look for to see some of these faults that we might see with the early arm bend. So in terms of the fitness athlete crew, we have several live courses coming up here to jam pack the end of the year. We got New York, Victory, New York is coming up. We have Rome, Georgia. We have Austin, Texas next week. Mitch and I will be down in Austin, Texas. I'll be in October in Peoria, Illinois with Kelly Benfey. So if you're looking to get us on or the live courses, the clinical manager, the fitness athlete live, go on to ptonice.com and search for live courses. We have a smattering of courses coming up in the next several weeks. Advanced and essentials concepts are just in a transition zone right now. We will have another essentials coming up towards the end of the year. And then advanced will kick off in 2023 again. So live and online courses, we're keeping them coming to you guys. We really appreciate all your dedication to treating our fitness athletes there. So let's talk about early arm bend. So what I mean by early arm bend is when we start to see an athlete as they pass their knees and go into the second pull of their clean or their snatch, that before they hit power position, that they're starting to bend the elbow. You're seeing an increased inflection angle at the elbow. And that is something that can sometimes lead to other faults or issues with an Olympic lift. So the reason I bring this up, though, is because if you look at a lot of elite lifters, not most of them, but some of them, people often say, well, so-and-so who, wins silver medal or gold medal at the Olympics, when you watch their videos in slow motion, they are having an early arm bend as well. Why is this a problem? And let's differentiate the two of these here. So for clarity, for those listening who can't see, what we're talking about in that second pull of Olympic lifting is the point that the barbell transitions around the knee and is continuing to now sweep in through the thigh and into that hip crease in that pocket and through triple extension. So second pull is basically from just after the transition of the knee all the way through triple extension when we get tall and create our power. What we'd like to see ideally is that arms are staying relatively straight through most of that second pull until triple extension has occurred, and then we are starting to accelerate the bar upward with a powerful shrug and a high elbow drive. The problem or the fault that is being noted is when that elbow bend is occurring early in that second pull. So let's talk about the scenario in which this is okay, because it's clean and clear and we can make it concise in what we're seeing. If we bend the elbow during the second pull at what would be considered an early position, let's just say like the distal part of the thigh, and it stays in a relatively bent angle all the way through the second pull and triple extension into the final positions of the Olympic lift, that typically is not an issue. This is usually what we see with a high level athlete who is doing an early arm bend, is that they are not re-straightening the arm. It is maintaining its bend throughout the entire movement, and therefore they are maintaining position and not leaking power. They're just creating a new structure to pull from. So it is okay as long as an athlete can maintain that arm bend, that small arm bend through the second pull, that it typically is not going to lead to many issues afterwards through that potential fall. What we see in our more novice lifters, though, when they're having early arm bend, is that somewhere in that distal part of the thigh, that lower part of the thigh, they start to bend the elbow. They start pulling early. They get anxious and pull early. And often as they approach that hip crease or that pocket where they're going to be creating power position and then maximal triple extension, they will re-straighten the elbow and then rebend the elbow to try to create extra torque or pull on the bar. In reality, what we know is that if we're going from a bent to a straight back to a bent position, we are leaking power, we are losing tension, and anywhere we lose tension, we lose the ability to create acceleration and getting that barbell to move upwards like we're looking. It slows it down. It slows the movement down. A number of other things can occur, like improper bar path and transition phases there, but the barbell slows down. And when you're watching these athletes, it almost looks like a cogwheel. It's so hard to describe sometimes without having that visual, but it looks like they start to gain speed, lose speed, and then almost restart from scratch. Like they're trying to get all that momentum back going. And that's often because they've lost that tension on that barbell by bending, re-extending, and then bending that elbow. So conclusion there again, between these two, early arm bend, as seen maybe in a skilled lifter or a high level lifter, is okay, or even a novice athlete, it is okay as long as the elbow bent position that occurs early stays at the relative same angle and does not go through a re-straightening phase and then a rebending phase. If it stays bent, we're okay. It is not okay, or it seems to lead to issues when we see early arm bend and then somewhere around power position, that point of takeoff, it re-extends and then they rebend looking to create power or torque in their mind. They're trying to get that bar to accelerate. That is not okay, because typically what they're actually doing is decelerating before accelerating again. And somewhere in there's a leak of power and a loss of ability to move that barbell efficiently. So we have those two scenarios. We don't need to go and coach or correct somebody who's able to appropriately move a barbell with a slight early arm bend if they are meeting the criteria of not re-extending. We need to be okay that, especially in these high level lifters who are figuring this out, and often it's not a coached thing. It's never a coached thing. Usually it's just that they've adapted to this position and it works really well for them, and they're able to maximally perform that way. We don't need to go and fix that. But in the other athlete who is plateauing in their lifts because they get to a certain weight where they cannot bend, extend, rebend, and create enough power and torque to actually get that bar to power up and float up into the clean or the snatch, that is an issue. So what do we do when people have early arm bend? First, we coach. Videos are super helpful here, because often in full speed, fast speed, they aren't feeling it. And if you were to show them even a video in full and regular speed, they're going to see something, but they're not going to realize maybe where this is coming from. So having a video that you can slow down and just start to show them that, hey, we need to be a little bit more patient. As you pass the knee, I need to think patience, patience, patience. We want long, strong, stiff arms sweeping that bar back into our hip crease before we hit power position. Just speaking through that idea is going to be helpful with these athletes, just so they have an understanding of what you're talking about. So we always want to coach and show and teach, and we're going to use words like patience and we got to get them on track with what we're talking about. But because it's a sort of a dynamic complex, a lot of times it isn't that they can feel it. They can't necessarily feel when this is occurring. So we're going to have to put them in positions with some accessory work that maybe makes them exploit this issue and work through it from a dynamic position, like a complex, for example. So if we talk about drills that people might benefit with early arm bend, I would assume, and I would often be programming, that anything that I can get them pausing around that knee is going to make this very challenging for them, but it's going to start to show them that, hey, if I take all your acceleration away, we pause you at your knee, and from here, now you have to basically perform some version of a hang clean or snatch, or maybe it's just a hang high pull. It's going to make them feel a little bit vulnerable, and they're going to have to figure out how to make this work, which by leaving a relatively extended arm throughout that pulling position is going to allow them to create more speed, more power, more torque. So put them in a position that they're vulnerable in and make them work through it to figure out what they're going to have to do to create this when the full motion, the full lift is coming back into play. So I love the implication of adding pauses into programming or complexes. Maybe we go, first pull, we go from the floor to the knee. Second pull, we pause at the knee, we sweep into power position. I have them go back to the top of the knee. And then from here, I say, hey, you notice how you were able to keep that arm nice and straight during that transition from knee to hip. Let's go back to the top of the knee and perform a hang clean or a hang snatch from that position. So it might be a pull from the floor, pause at the knee, sweep to power position, back to the top of the knee. Maybe we do that one more time, sweep back to the top of the knee, and then now perform a clean and or a snatch. These complexes are really good because now we can take that second pull, which is where the fault occurred, and make them work through it without having to consider the complications of performing the full lift at one or two of those attempts, and then try to see if that brain-body connection comes back into play where they can perform the rest of that lift. So that's another option. And then just working, I love working pulls from either the floor or from the hang position. Those can be super helpful, which could be a part of a complex. and then just working positions from hang clean in general or hang snatch in general. So you have multiple ways that we could attack this, but I think between doing complexes, between doing pauses, between doing hang cleans, between doing high pulls, any of the four are very reasonable ways to try to work an athlete through an early arm bend. What we need to do is find positions that expose that weakness to the point where they feel it. They feel the difference between one version and another version, and we hammer those out, and then we go back to adding into that full lift at some point there, which is why the complex is probably maybe your best option, because you could do all of the above in one version there. So I wanted to at least have that conversation, because I think it's one of these things that we have to understand as clinicians and as coaches, that there is no such thing as the perfect ideal movement for all one person. It's sort of a similar conversation that we have often as we teach with the adductor whip, that knee valgus position. There is a difference between a knee valgus fault, which is truly an issue and needs to be corrected, and a difference between somebody who may just elicit some adductor whip and some knee valgus position due to looking to create power and torque, but it's often at a subconscious level. It's not something that they're creating. A lot of the athletes who get away with early arm bend at a high level aren't necessarily thinking, oh, if I bend my arms early, I'm going to be a better lifter. What they're probably doing is basically compensating in a really good way that allows them to perform the movement better, but they're doing it in such an efficient pattern that they're not going to lead to other issues that you would see, like the deceleration, the lack of barbell path, or the poor contact points that you might get if someone is inappropriately bending the elbow there. So as clinicians and as PTs, we need to understand that there is no hardcore solid blueprint for what all movements should look like, but we do have standards that we're looking for, and as long as an athlete can fit and check off these major standards of a movement, we can be okay with a little bit of variation between one of those and the other. So hopefully that wasn't too visual and lack of having too many opportunities to use words rather than visuals. I know that's gonna be tough without seeing, but go on to things like hook grip, or film your friends, and start looking for this and see if you can find ways to differentiate from an early arm bend that may be problematic and not problematic, or then if you do find one that is, how do we coach through that? How do we use complexes or pulls or different transitional positions to really focus on improving these barbell paths and improving the efficiency of a lift with proper technique there. So look for us, guys. Appreciate your effort here, but look for us live, look for us online with the CMFA Advanced Course Concepts. If you have any problems that you're looking to address in terms of treating the fitness population, by all means, we're here for you. Shoot us DMs, emails, whatever it might be. But have a great weekend. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later.